This video contains content sponsored by John Wilson Blades and MK Blades. Opinions discussed in this video do not reflect the views of John Wilson or MK.
Hello and welcome to TSL Presents Olympian 360. I'm thrilled to welcome the coach of 96 Olympic gold medalists, Amanda Borden and JC Phelps, and countless world and national team members, Mary Lee Tracy. Mary Lee, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Jenny is sad she can't be here. When we started to do gymnastics interview, she said, we have to get Mary Lee. We've watched you on TV for years. We're one of our favorite personalities.
Thank you.
I have to start with a bit of a startling question because you got back from the ranch. And I saw something there that I'm not used to seeing at the ranch. There were a lot of photos on Facebook of marshmallows being roasted by a fire. And I was going through those albums to see if there were any bite marks. There was no evidence that anyone ate marshmallows. So was this seen? Was it happening? What is happening there?
It's for real. Like Marta does things like that randomly. I've traveled internationally with her many times, and at the end of a trip, we all go get an ice cream, or we can get a French pastry if we're in France. And this was our last national camp for this season. And so we went to this place called the Lodge at the ranch, and we were invited to roast marshmallows, and the kids absolutely loved it.
Okay. Well, you've been through many Olympic cycles, so how does the national team look at this point?
Well, the national team is extremely deep, extremely strong. You know, we have a couple kids on the mend. I think everybody knows that both Lori and Maggie are on the mend. And I think the anticipation is that they will be ready to go, which will increase the depth. Without them would decrease the depth. But we're strong, and I think probably the selection committee is going to have one of the toughest times ever picking a team.
Well, speaking of the selection committee, Marta Caroli has said that she would retire after this year. 4 years ago, she said that she would retire, and she didn't. We haven't seen any articles about her swan song yet. So is she for sure retiring?
Yes.
Yes?
I can say this time without doubt or hesitation. I know there's been a lot of negotiations about the ranch and USA Gymnastics, and Marta talks about what she's going to do, and she's going to travel, and it did not feel the same last time, but it feels, and Steve Penny came in and talked to us about the position and gave us all the job descriptions. So it's completely different than it was 4 years ago. So I think it's for real.
Will she consult still, do you think, on some level? I mean, it's going to be on their property. Yeah.
It's going to be on their property. I think she would consult if asked.
Okay. Well, we'll have to ask. Now, you got your start as a cheerleader. So I want to know, what was Mary Lee Tracy like as a cheerleader? Were you head cheerleader? Were you a flyer? Did you have the flexibility? Tell us about this.
That's really funny. I was captain of the cheerleaders, as you can imagine.
Okay.
I've always been the one who wanted to organize structure, you know, and when I get together with my high school friends, they always tease me about the same A-type personality that I have now, and that, you know, I wanted the workouts regimented, and I wanted, yes. So, and I was, at that point, I was the tumbler. You know, obviously gymnastics was not then what it is now. So, you know, the fact that I could do a back handspring was huge. But mostly I was the leader.
Okay. Now, we know that you got your start coaching through a tumbling class, through cheerleading,
yes,
and then were offered to buy the gym. It became CGA. So at what point did you really get the coaching bug? Because so many rec gyms make money. You know, you don't have to start going through the levels. When did you really get bitten by that bug?
I think this gift of teaching is just, it's your passion. You know, if that's what you're created to do, when you start doing it, you feel it, you know it. And so, you know, all of this time through high school, and, you know, I was always into leading, organizing, and then cheerleading was motivating, inspire people to do things, you know, that type of thing. And so once I started coaching, I knew that's where I was supposed to be. I learned more about gymnastics, and then I wanted to do it to the max. I don't do a lot of things half A, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So my whole life, I've just always aspired to climb and get better and learn more. And so it was no different when I was younger.
So you're infamous for your online videos, and you really are known for mentoring coaches over the years. So how did you learn the technique that you teach, and who mentored you?
A lot of people mentored me. Woodward Gymnastics probably was my biggest mentor as far as gymnastics education. I went up there, this obviously was before there were as many pits and all the other apparatus now, but I had to spot, we didn't have pits then, in-ground pits. So they were a big part of it, and all the coaches up there. And then the rest has been through observation. I mean, I watched Bella and Marta and Steve and Peggy and Kelly Hill and Mark Young, all different styles. And as I watched them, I had to decide what style worked the best for me. So I kind of picked a little bit from each one of them, what I saw, and then added my own and kind of became my own thing.
Well, Amanda Borden and the Litchi sisters arrived at your gym around the same time. So I guess what stood out to you about Amanda early on?
That she was a crybaby. No, I'm just kidding. I could say that to her face. I think it probably was her smile on top of eagerness to learn, I think was what stood out. The Litchis were salt and pepper. Karen was the eager beaver, not quite as talented, but just we had a work ethic. And Christy had all the talent and was a spitfire. So the three of them together taught me a lot about, well, you can't coach them all the same.
Interesting. Well, at the 92 Olympic trials, one of the things that floored commentators was that you let Amanda pick which second vault she wanted to do. And they were saying how Bella would never allow that. And then the next year, we saw Amanda try and crash and burn on about every skill in the book before she really got her routines down. So how did you and Amanda really find your groove and your success by 94?
Well, I just feel like Amanda and I had chemistry, yet we were different. She required, when you're a strong personality, you have to learn to appreciate and tolerate differences because not everybody is wired like you. Amanda taught me that. And I think the way that we came together is through communication. Amanda was a talker and I was a talker. So it was good and bad because it was good because we shared what felt good, what felt right. And remember, I was still a rookie at that time. So hearing how did that feel or did that help was really good. The downside of that is we would go circular sometimes when we would have disagreements.
Okay. Well, you became really known for your students having outstanding compulsories, and that was really their weapon. Amanda had the highest floor score a number of times. So how did that become your strength as a coach?
Because I'm A-type and it was detail. And I still to this day miss compulsories because if you are a rookie coach, the one thing that compulsories do teach you is how to do it right. That's where I was forced to learn technique. I was forced to learn execution, and at a very early part of my career. So it was extremely beneficial to the development of the coach that I became because of compulsories. Back then, not only did we have compulsories, it was 60-40. 60% of your score with compulsories. Now we have nothing.
Would you spend 60% of the time in the gym on compulsories too?
Absolutely. Like we would come in the mornings and we would do our compulsories, then we would do our optionals in the afternoon. And the compulsories were not as body pounding. So you could do more repetitions of the basics that were in the compulsories. So I think that was extremely beneficial.
Well, in 94, your big moment happened at the 94 Worlds. You had two athletes on the team, both Amanda and JC made it. And that's when Shannon and Steve went home. And initially, the team had a really rough optional outing where they kept showing the falls on TV. They showed everyone Amy Chow missing. So to get them ready for the team finals, what did you say to Amanda and JC to really turn that around?
Well, I think, back then when it was individual, there was no national team coordinator. Even if you were the named coach and you really didn't have impact. So everybody could play their players a lot the way that they needed to. Very similar, though, that it's like that now. And with Amanda and just JC, their whole career, along with mine, was this believe thing. And back then, I knew what it meant, and I very much taught that, preached that. Now what I know is that what the mind really does believe you can make happen. I didn't associate it back then as much to how much your mind controls your body, just as if your heart said, I can do this, I can do this. And so that was mostly what I used with them, was just believe. You are totally capable. You can do this. We've trained more than I do. Like now I use more your mind controls your body. Like I've learned so much over the past 20 years. But the concept is same, but the depth of what I say is different now than it was then.
It's interesting. In 95, Bella came on the scene with Dominique and all of that personality and attention. So what was it like traveling to a Worlds with him back in action, him essentially leading the team, you having an athlete, JC, who had an injury? What was that kind of like navigating? You know, you have Steve Nuno, there's you.
I was very afraid of them. You know, I respected them, but there were things that I didn't want to do like them. I wanted to do it a little bit differently. And the fact that JC was hurt, but they wanted her to come, they knew that she was hurt and they wanted her to come. There was pressure because they needed her for compulsories and they needed her for different little things. And so we focused on that, and I just stayed in my own little world with her. I remember, you know, the team went and did different things, and there were small activities afterwards, media, different little events. JC and I had to go back every single day, and we just sat in the room, and we just iced and did therapy, and we talked. And that's what she needed at that point. I mean, JC wasn't as social as Amelia. Oh my gosh, I'm in the current day. As social as Amanda, like she didn't need the same things that Amanda needed. And so JC was totally content just taking care of her body. And that's the only way we got through that.
Well, in 1996, I remember watching the Olympic trials vividly, live on TV. And it was the story of the athletes, but also the coaches. And you, Tom Forrester, and Steve Nuno each wanted athletes for those last spots on the team. It was Jenny Thompson with Steve, Tom Forrester had Christy Powell and Teresa, and you had Amanda and JC. And Tom seemed very nervous. Steve always seemed extremely overpowering with Jenny Thompson. How did you manage your nerves at that time to channel positively to your athletes? Because it has to be a stressful moment for you.
Well, I think a little bit was naivety. You know, I was a little still green, and we were a team. Oh, and then I remember before we went out, the whole training before that was either both of us or none of us. That's the way those two were. So we kind of had this power of the three of us, and that we were going to fight to the end to get all of us in. And if you remember, I think it was after the first day, JC was like third or fourth, and Amanda was sitting in seventh place. And we went to the lobby, and I remember her mom was crying, and she was, you know, so nervous. Is this going to happen to you again? Because in 92, Amanda had really made it, but then all of the stuff got switched around. And Amanda just looked at her mom and she says, "Don't worry, Mom, I got this." And I don't know, we had such a depth of belief that it was going to be all three of us, that there was power in that belief. So it cut out distractions. You know, it wasn't like, oh, she's almost up to you, or, oh, who could do that? It was just like, we're going to do this. We are going to absolutely do this.
Were you even looking at the scoreboard? I remember Amanda was reading The Power of Positive Thinking, John Tesh said.
We were so into that. It was amazing. I don't quite remember, but I think I was just so focused on those kids hitting their routines. I knew they could do it, but I knew they had to hit. And that really was where I was at.
Now, in 96, many athletes on that team actually had injuries going into Atlanta. You were one of the coaches along with Marta. So how did the two of you work around their injuries to also prepare them for the biggest meet of their lives at that point?
Personal coaches were relatively still involved, and Marta had the wisdom, the knowledge, the experience. I was the spotter and the mat mover, which was even more intense because I was the spotter and we had some dings. So I pretty much just was subservient to Marta because she had been there, done that multiple times. And, you know, I feel like they picked Marta and I for different reasons. You know,
Marta, good cop, bad cop?
Totally. You know, I was there very much for the athletes, not just spotting, but the old cheerleader thing came up. And, you know, I don't remember who selected us at that time. I don't know if there was a selection committee or who did that, but it was a good choice because I was young and enthusiastic and, you know, could spot and move mats, and Marta had the experience. And So it worked.
What was it like leading with? Did you know her well at that time?
I was pretty intimidated by her and Bella.
Okay. Was he as involved with the team if Marta was in charge, or how did that? Okay.
Not currently at all,
Yeah,
but
back then.
back then, very much so he was involved.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was a ton of talent on that team. You had the careers of Dominique Dawes and Shannon Miller coming to the culmination. Dominique Moceanu was everywhere in the media, and Amy Chow was so talented on bars. So how much of a push and pull was it to get Amanda and JC in those lineups? And how did you unify the team?
Well, I didn't get into the controversy and the politics that went on back then. And so many coaches criticized me for not fighting harder in the lineups, especially for JC. Like JC was first up on a lot of the events. Mm-hmm. And Amanda, you kind of knew where she fit in. Mm-hmm. I mean, you knew vault was she was never going to vault. So I wasn't playing the same cards everybody else was. And I was okay with JC starting off because at that point, I was so happy to be on that team and wanted to be a part of the team thing. And you know what? JC was clean. She was a hitter. Mm-hmm. That's normally a first person spot. So, I feel like because I wasn't as invested in individuals, some of those kids, it was their second time out. They'd been to 50 million worlds, and their agendas were a little higher maybe than mine. Good or bad, that's what it was. So I was really there for more about the team, and it worked.
Did Amanda and JC care about is this something you had to talk them into? You're the leadoff. This is an opportunity? No.
It was the leadoff because you're consistent and you're clean, and they want you to lead the team off. And maybe if I had fought for JC to be in a better spot, maybe the wrong person would have gone in first, because JC had the scores possibly to be a little further down in the lineup. So I think because I didn't have an agenda except for team, I think I was easy to be the person that kept everybody cohesive. And I was young. The kids hung out. I mean, that's who I was.
Well, JC had been such a rock in '96, and she had individual potential. So how shocked were you when she fell on compulsory beam in the Olympics?
Shocked. That was her age. Like at that point, Jace was not super experienced, and I guess the pressure just kind of got to her. But it was so uncharacteristic of her. Mm-hmm.
Well, after compulsories, the team was only a 10th and change behind Russia. And Bella was on TV already on the Today Show saying USA is going to win. So how hungry were you and the team after the first day? Could you taste that opportunity?
Yes, we could taste it. But remember, like now we've had years of winning worlds, winning Olympics. We didn't have that then. Mm-hmm. So it was still, we went into that competition to medal. Mm-hmm. It's a little different now. Mm-hmm. It's a gold medal and should be. But at that point, we wanted to be on the award stand. So the pressure was there to be on the award stand. Mm-hmm. That was it. It wasn't so much that we had to have gold. And for that group, that period, that time, obviously that's what the focus needed to be. And then look where we came out.
When did it shift to the gold? Throughout the night, just gradually? Or okay.
I think because those competitions move so fast because it's you're up, you're down, you're up, you're down, you're up, you're down. And, we had always been taught not to focus on the score, focus on getting your job done. And there wasn't as much technology that scores were everywhere and you saw what was going on. So most of us, on the floor, I had no idea the closeness of when we got over to vault and the whole Carrie Strug situation happened, we knew we were close. We knew we were doing well because we were hitting. But when it came down to vault, we didn't know that even if Carrie had fall that we could win. We didn't know that. So it was up until the last minute that we just were still trying to get a medal.
I think sometimes in pressure situations you have like the strangest thoughts go through your mind or memories. I remember competing once, going into a jump thinking what I was going to eat for dinner that night randomly. Do you have weird memories from the Olympics? Like, what do you remember about that moment, moving the mats, getting the boards set up?
No, I do.
Okay.
I didn't want to mess up.
Okay.
I was, my personality, and, I was the one setting the boards, setting the mats, spotting, all of those things. And I remember I had my little cheat sheet with everything written down because I didn't. And then when Carrie messed up vault, I must have checked the board the second time 50 million times thinking, oh my gosh, I hope that I didn't do something to cause this. So I think that's, you know, there's so many great memories, but at the actual competition, that's what I was so focused on, just taking care of business, you know, because I was the person in charge of taking care of that kind of business. And that's totally where my focus was. And I remember that as clear as I remember moving the board for Carrie. I remember walking back up and looking and making sure I got the board set right, because I didn't want to be blamed for it.
You knew they were coming for you.
I was so afraid they were going to come.
So JC was obviously known to be extremely talented. I think people talk about JC more now than they did then. They relook at her bar routine, her technique. So how bad was her knee in Atlanta, and was there talk about whether or not she would continue?
Her knee in Atlanta was pretty good. It was that World Championships where her knee was bad. By the time we got ready for the Olympics, she was pretty good. Mm-hmm. And then she moved to, was it Arizona or Colorado? Arizona first. And she trained at Desert Devils again for a little while. Mm-hmm. And she was with Stormy's son. Mm-hmm. And started to compete, but then the knee just didn't hold up. Mm. And she still has major, major knee problems.
Interesting. Well, there was an immediate drop-off after the 96 Olympic Games. And if you look back at the trials, it seemed like there was so much depth in the younger girls. Teresa Kulikowski, Jenny Thompson, Christy Powell, Mary Beth Arnold, Katie Taft, Mohini. So why do you think the results immediately dropped off after that 96 team?
Well, I think a lot of those girls did try to continue. Mm-hmm. Jenny came to my gym. Mm-hmm. Mary Beth Arnold came to my gym. And Kim Zemesko. I mean, when you think that whole, like my gym was all of a sudden full of people wanting to come back, people wanting to keep going.
Do you think they were burned out or anything after that?
I think some of them were burned out. And, you know, I had this, you know, positive, you know, image, and, you know, I was a little bit different than everybody else. And so, you know, I think people thought it would be different, but some kids had just been there, done that a long time, and were just tired. Jenny Thompson actually had the best meet of her life. If you remember when she won American Cup, you know, she actually made a comeback that lasted for a little bit of time. But I don't know. The gymnastics wasn't as hard so on their bodies as it is now. So I'm not sure why some of the bodies didn't hold up, because look how old some of these girls are now that are doing this new crazy code and surviving. I'm not sure.
Well, you talk about everyone going to you, and I remember there was an elite team photo on your website, and you had like 12 elites, a young Marie Fjordholm, everyone, people on this photo. Was there a part of you that was nervous and wondering, am I as good as my results? I mean, all of a sudden, everyone, okay. What was that period like for you? Okay.
Probably more stressful than the Olympics, because prior to 96, there were no expectations. Mm-hmm. You know, I was like almost, you know, whoa, where'd they come from? You know, is where afterwards all these people start coming to your gym and you're supposed to bring them back after they've let off and, you know, out of shape. And yeah, like leading up to 2000 were probably some of the most challenging times of my coaching career.
Well, you were on the bus with the Magnificent Seven all around the country for all of those cities. So how much coaching were you doing with all of those elites that were in your gym, and how did you balance that?
Well, most of it didn't happen until after the tour was finished. Okay. You know, it was after the tour was finished, then they started coming in, and I had a good coaching staff that was with me, and everybody kind of worked together, and it just worked. But it wasn't until after the tour. Mm.
Well, in 97, you talked about Mary Beth Arnold. I was looking back at nationals results, and you look at, you know, we had such a bad world championships, but she had mid-nines on most of her routines at nationals, except for one or two really bad routines that she had. Do you think that in 97, had there been a selection committee, things could have been a little bit improved?
Maybe they could have been different. Yeah, it was from 97 all the way up till 2000, you know, everything was in transition. There was nothing as concrete. People, some of it was rebellion. Some of it was wanting something different. And I think the country didn't know what they wanted. Because we weren't still, I mean, we had won this first gold medal and then we for world championships. And so everything was in disarray for about 3 years. And then in 2000 was, you know, even more challenging.
Well, Christy Powell became your first national all-around champion. So what was that experience like for you? And then 6 months later, it seemed like she was burnt out. So I guess kind of talk us through that journey.
Well, I was not Christy Powell's original coach. I didn't do all the groundwork for her. But she came to me, and she was an interesting person, and she just had it in her that she wasn't done. And so when an athlete comes to me and says that, I like them all to finish on as much of a I'm ready to stop as possible. So, maybe that was all she needed, was this one big victory, and then she was done. But she didn't like pain a lot either, and she had a lot of aches and pains just from overall wear and tear over the years.
Well, nowadays they have a world championships every single year. But in 98, they did it for some reason. And there was kind of that lull between 97 and 99. And you look at all the hype that was going around Vanessa Atler at that time. And I guess if you...
Pop and gyms, change everybody. It was all over.
Do you think those 98 worlds would have kind of gotten everyone in gear, hampered expectations? I mean, do you think not having
I think if we had a national team coordinator, if we had started that a little bit earlier, I think that it would have been smoother. It was, like I said, what I remember from 97, after the tour on, it was just highs, lows. It felt like a roller coaster all the way up through 2000.
Well, you talk about 2000, and I thought it was the strangest thing. You had all of these talents, and Morgan White wound up being your lead contender, and she just crept up, as you used to say. But she was definitely your main contender. But there was some talk that she had a foot injury, rumors for months before the Olympics. So at what point did it start hurting her, and what was kind of the evolution of that?
We were at some kind of I don't remember what it was. I think it was in Texas or something. There was a test event or a trials event. I don't remember what it was. And Morgan had told me that her foot was hurting. So when we got back to Cincinnati, we went to this doctor, and he kept telling us, oh, it was a hot spot. It was a hot spot. So, okay, so we kept going, and then she makes the team. So it kind of chilled out through that period, and then it kind of got rough again. And I said, I think we should go have this checked again. So we went to this same doctor, and he kept saying the same thing. Well, hot spot, so I started asking people, what does that mean? And they said, well, it could be the beginning of a stress fracture, which I think is what it really is. And so we started backing down on numbers. And he told us, this was like the week before we left for Sydney, and he said, put her in a boot all the way there, and then she should be fine. So that's what we did. She wore the boot, we got there, and I think it was day 1 or day 2. Like, I know Morgan, and Morgan's an honest kid, and Morgan was like, I can't do it. And I said, okay. So I went to a medical Can I let my dog out?
Yeah.
Thieves, come on, let's go outside. Go outside. Okay, so then we went to the doctor, got an x-ray, and of course it was fractured. And I just remember me and Morgan sitting there, and that was when Bella and Marta were kind of in charge. And so we had to go up to the room. And you know how you picture vividly like the house we were in? And I remember Morgan and I like walking up there trying to be really strong and not cry, because you don't cry with the Carolics, So I remember we knocked on their door, and we went in there, and we told them, and we were a little whimpery and everything. And they said, you have to do a formal withdrawal scratch. And the whole process was ugly. And I'm not blaming them, but, we went to Kathy Kelly, and it was like, turn in your credentials, and they had to cut our credentials up, and, all this unnecessary stuff. And I don't know who makes the rules and the regulations. It wasn't so much like USA Gymnastics. It might have been the Olympic Committee, but the whole process was not fun, obviously, when you have to pull out. And so I remember Kathy Kelly giving Morgan the option to stay or to leave. And Morgan's personality, because Morgan wanted this more than life. And when she got this dream and goal, I just don't know that she's ever been the same since this whole thing, because I've never seen a kid work and push beyond their physical capabilities as Morgan White did. I mean, there were 10 kids that were 10 times more talented than Morgan that could have been on that team. So she left, and then it was just really uncomfortable there. And then NBC contacted me and offered me a little position. So I stayed in Sydney and just worked with NBC in the truck, and then I came home.
Well, you talk about NBC. One of the things they love to show is Morgan White crying at those national championships because she missed a vault. Now, this was a selection committee. I don't know what would have to happen for Morgan to have vaulted in those Olympics. Was this something that you tried to put in perspective with her? I mean, what was she so upset over that one vault?
Because Morgan was a very intense athlete, very intense person, and she put every single thing into everything she did. And she was so upset just because she made a mistake publicly. She's just not one that's why she's a hitter in competitions, because she doesn't like to make a mistake.
Well, one of the other things I wanted to know is she always did that double layout. And as perfect as Morgan was, she could never keep that straight body. Was that something where you tried other dismounts with her over the years?
Yeah, and I didn't develop Morgan White. If you remember, Tim and Tony Rand did from her early days, and because Morgan was stubborn and intense, if she didn't want to change something, you didn't want to beat your head against the wall. Okay. You just kept trying to make it better.
Interesting. Well, one of your most talented athletes at that time appeared to be Sierra Sapinar. I remember watching her over the years, one of my favorite athletes in college. And in '99, it looked like she was going to make the world team. She was beating Elise Ray at that U.S. Classic, and then she got injured. Yet, over the years, she had so many injuries. I mean, is that someone where you think it's like a nutrition issue, a pounding issue? What is that?
Hers was mental. Sierra had, first of all, she did have a little bit of a fragile body. She was that lean, beautiful type that,
They always get her?
They do. They don't have the muscle mass packed in to protect the body quite as well. But Sierra, both of her parents are therapists. So it was very hard for Sierra to get out of her head and into her body. So she would overthink everything. And sometimes her mind-body connection was either very much on or it was very much off. And so a lot of her injuries were a loss of mind-body connection on top of being a fragile body type. Sierra had trouble competing. She did not compete well, and in workouts, she would have a lot of erratic falls. It wouldn't always be like this skill or this event or that event. She was one of the most beautiful gymnasts I've ever seen, coached, lines, everything was exquisite. So in college, when they were able to take this enormous amount of volume out of their routines, her mind could handle it, and that's why I think she did. And I think there's a lot of elite athletes that we see that are super talented, and then they get into NC2A and they come phenomenal.
Interesting. Well, you talked about Jenny Thompson earlier winning that American Cup, kind of one of the highlights of that quadrennium. And she had an ankle injury and pulled out of Worlds that she was battling throughout the year. So how bad was that ankle?
It was bad because Jenny was a very tough athlete, very tough mentally and physically. And she was also at that time struggling mentally as to 100%, do I want to keep doing this? So on top of the injury, when you have a little bit of that and you're injured, it's really hard to push yourself through the injury. That's where that came from. Well, you have a great memory, or else you've done your research. Boy, you're making me jog up my memory.
Sorry.
You're shaking my memory. Wow. It's great. It's great. It's bringing up a lot of good stuff. All of my career, even the hurtful, hard Morgan White stories. I love every bit of my career.
So you had two athletes on the '99 World Team, and one of the infamous stories that we hear from the time is that at the training camp at Parkettes, there were athletes on the team that were not training as hard as your girls were. Is that true?
Well, what's true is everybody has different training styles. So what might be my opinion of training hard and others may be different. But in my opinion and what I believed preparation was about, there were others that were not training in that fashion.
They don't train like they do today.
No.
Okay, that's what I have heard. Okay, so I think that's interesting. Well, in 2000, you had quite the challenge when the star of mid-90s gymnastics, Dominique Moceanu, joined your gym, and it seemed like it was a race against time for her to make that second Olympic team. So kind of walk us through that journey. She was originally cut from the camp, most improved camper. I mean, it seemed like quite an experience.
You know, my experience coaching Dominique was good. I liked her. She was coachable. She, did what I asked. She was good. There's a lot of controversy with her parents at that time, especially her dad. Well, he didn't come to Cincinnati. It was just her and her mom. So I really enjoyed both of them. I think there was a lot of dissension between Dominique and the Carollis, obviously. And so she kind of went into that with a big black mark on her board. And I think she did the best that she could, but I just don't think she had a chance because of the situation.
Do you think she needed to come back earlier, or would it not have even mattered?
I think if she would have come back earlier, she would have had to have been a superstar to make the Carollis open their eyes and look at her again. And she was just still fighting her comeback, and she was at I don't want to say the bottom, because she wasn't at the bottom. She was at the middle of the pack, but to be able to make it into the pack, she would have had to maybe have had a different past experience with the Carollis.
How different were those camps back then to how they are today?
Well, we've gone through so many different eras at the ranch, so like the last era, Marta's on the way out. So they're a little bit different than they were a year ago, than they were 2 years ago. So when you go way back to then, I feel the camp is a better environment now, just overall, from our rooms to the food to the, everything is better. Now, that does not mean that it's good or great. I just said it's better.
Okay.
And it's tolerable.
Okay.
But then was just scratchy. It was power struggles. It was lack of direction. There was not the kind of leadership that there is now. Whether the leadership is right or wrong, when there's leadership, there's something to follow. And there wasn't a lot of that back then. So it is far better. Whether you agree with what Marta and leaders choose, there is leadership.
You talk about leadership, and at that time you were leading Alyssa Beckerman through, and that seemed to be one of the most interesting dynamics, coaching-wise, for you. She was one of the most beautiful gymnasts we had ever seen.
Beautiful.
Now, at the trials, on day one, she struggled, and she was against Atler, Shannon Miller, and Dominique Dawes for that sixth spot and that alternate position. And you talked to her about focusing in competition. How did you get her focused for that final night of trials?
I mean, Alyssa, you had to be right there in her face as far as focus. Alyssa, get in the box. Alyssa, we're going to beam now, get in the box. She was a little bit ADHD, all over the place. And that's kind of, you had to give her only one thought at a time. You had to go very methodically with her, because if you gave her too much, she couldn't process it all at the same time. And she was brilliant. But it was very hard because she was brilliant to stay right on task. So with her, it was just about staying on task and just, okay, now we're going to vault. Now we're going to bars. And I feel like her whole career, once her mom shared with me who she was, it was a lot easier for me to coach her.
Now, was she on medication at the time for ADHD, or was she allowed to be?
Well, you could. There was so much with USADA. So there were things that were approved and not approved, and some of the holistic type medications were approved and the others weren't. So she had to stop things, start things. It was really a challenge for her and her family. but they did the best they could.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of those things that we heard is that you guys split during the Olympics and that when Bella chose to take Tasha. So did you and Alyssa part ways in Sydney, or is that just a rumor?
Did Alyssa and I part ways? No, we didn't part ways until they named the actual team and they competed. So you know how you can put an alternate in up until the first day of competition once it starts, I forget exactly what the rule is. But anyway, so once that period of time finished, then she went with her family who was in Sydney, and then I went on to help NBC.
Okay. Were you surprised that Bella picked Tasha? Or was
No. Alyssa just unfortunately checked out at that point. I mean, I don't know why. The window of opportunity was there, and Tasha flew through, and she didn't.
Mm-hmm. Well, in 2002, you came back with a big highlight when you coached Sam Sheehan to that bronze medal on the floor. She actually won the semifinals at those World Championships. Now, one of the most interesting things about this is that you would often have Sam not compete beam and petition through. And was that a why didn't Sam often compete beam at like Olympic
because
trials?
She was so bad.
How is she that bad? We see your beam videos, Mary Lee.
No, she was bad. She knows she was bad. I remember we went to the test event in Athens before the Olympics, and she did beam. And I remember, who was the president then? Was Steve Penny the president? I think Steve Penny was the president. Whoever was the president was sitting with me and Marta or something, and Marta was clapping when Sam made this beam routine, and we were all excited, and it still scored like something ridiculously low. And Steve Penny, I think it was Steve Penny, said, why are you clapping? And I remember even Marta like, that was the best routine she's ever done. Sam, her and the beam just didn't get along well. And so a lot of times she may not have qualified for something, and so that's why she didn't always do beam.
Mm. Well, in 2006, Ashley Priest made the world team, and she competed in the all-around finals at the World Championships. So what was that experience like for you, having an athlete in those all-around finals? I remember she even had a shot at a medal at one point during that meet.
Ashley Priest works for me right now. And she was one of the most gifted athletes that I had. So getting her, but it's a package, you not only have to have the physical attributes, but my goodness, it's so much heart and soul and drive. And, so Ashley was just like a specimen, a little like Sierra Sapinar, only a little bit tighter up here, but the same mechanics. And, it was work to keep Ashley healthy. So when we got that far with her, it was one of those tasks she felt so good about because it was a challenge to get her there.
I remember her ripping her leg open on the bars as a junior or something, yeah.
Just, there was a wire out, and she didn't do a great pirouette and came down on the side of the bar, and there was a wire that just like sliced her leg.
Yeah.
And it just like opened up. It was kind of gross.
Well, in 2008, she had a real shot for that bar spot at the Olympics. She went to you to nationals in the pink Hummer stretch limo. You had pictures on your website. What happened at nationals?
It was probably one of the weirdest moments in my entire career, that it was the most unexpected. Not totally, but yes, because it was like getting to the finish line and not stepping over that last step. And I remember we were in warm-ups. I remember, again, one of those visuals. I can see the podium. We went into the, I was just like, Ashley, what's wrong? Like I could tell she was not present. And so we went out into the hallway and we talked, and she said, I can't do this. I was like, can't do what? She said, I can't do this. I can't, because even if I would make the team, I can't see myself being able to finish, because I know what it would take to go through, because she'd been through a world process, which is very similar to an Olympic process. And she said, I just don't have it in me to do it. So why do this?
How did the two of you wind up coaching together now? After
Ash
that.
and I have been through a lot because, so then she went to Alabama. We didn't speak for probably a year. Not speak out of anger, just speak out of disconnect. It wasn't like I hated her. It wasn't like she hated me. We just disconnected because I think I was in shock. You know, how can you be that close to possibly making an Olympic team and saying, I can't walk across the finish line? So, you know, it was just challenging. And then about, I guess, maybe her second or third year at Alabama, thanks to Sarah Patterson, who encouraged her to work on mending this relationship that was very deep and long. And so then after she graduated, we stayed in touch and we became closer and closer. And then when Ash got out of college, she was in Atlanta doing something, and then she was in California, and then she was trying to go college, and she didn't know what she wanted to do. And then she asked me for a job.
Okay.
And now she's here, and she just got engaged and just bought a house and is going to get married. And so we'll see.
Is it fun coaching together?
Yes, it's very fun because I love when my former athletes coach for me. Nothing is greater. And they know how I think, what I believe in, what is the core of my philosophy. And, you know, Ashley's one of those people.
Well, in the past, you were really known for having those body lines again and again and again. And then it looks like it switched with your latest crop. They're more of the muscular, powerful type. So is that a conscious choice?
No.
The lot.
Just what you get, you deal with.
Yeah.
And, you know, what was nice is that as the code was going towards that body type, you know, I just kind of got that, but I didn't like, okay, now I'm going to switch and I'm going to go for a mesomorphic body type.
Okay.
It's you deal with what you have.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, anyone who's watched any of the Flowcast gymnastic documentaries know that it's all about the CGA ones. They have always been the best on that channel. And the first one was so entertaining with you coaching Amelia and Lexi. And Lexi was so talented as a junior. She had that Aminar, that personality. How talented would you say she is compared to the people on the national team now?
She should be there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's as talented and as gifted and fit this code to the max. And I really feel like, unfortunately for her, she had the wrong birth date. Mm-hmm. So when she turned 16 in January and the cutoff is December 31st, because I really think that she was more primed up for the last Olympics than this would have been, you know? So, I mean, there's a lot of kids that go through the birthday issue as to why they do or don't make an Olympic team. And she had that working against her. And so when she couldn't make it at the 2012 Olympics, she and me and everybody else, like, you know, can she really hang in there for 4 years? And she tried. She tried really hard and it just didn't happen.
Well, much was made about her toe injury and that it coming off. How serious was that? Was that...
My gosh, she had so many toe problems.
Okay.
She had started out as turf toe, and then she had extra bone in her foot. And then she had these weird issues that behind her toes, they would always slit open, and she would literally, you know, like a lot of kids when they do fronts on beam, like you get those toe rips under your toes. But hers weren't just toe rips. They were like holes. And so we tried beam shoes, and we tried different tape jobs, and we tried chapstick, and we tried everything you could do. And so I just think it was a lot of aches and pains and just challenges that she wasn't wired to be able to handle. And so she moved on.
Well, on the contrary, you talked a lot about Amelia not being as talented as the other girls, very openly, how Marta, you know, didn't know what you were thinking in the beginning. But she's the one that's still here, still in it. She's been to 2 Pan Am games. So what do you think it is about Amelia that keeps her in the mix year after year?
She's one of the most amazing athletes I've ever coached in my life. A lot of it is family. Her family is athletic, but her parents are the type that... Amelia gave a speech last night at the banquet, and she said, one of the things I want to thank my parents for is teaching me that the coach is always right. So Amelia was one of those kids who you would really push her, and she would go home and she might try to whine or cry, and her parents were the type, they didn't get involved, but they trusted me enough that when I coached her a certain way or I asked her to do this, they supported it. And Amelia is a whatever it takes. Amelia was like taking, if you think of a jar of Play-Doh that was black, purple, green, blue, and you had to keep molding it and pushing the colors together and shape it and whatever, and trying to make it a pretty piece of Play-Doh. That's what my career with Amelia's been like.
Well, you speak about that, and she's headed to the University of Florida. But first, she has this summer ahead of her. What is your goal for Amelia? Is it to make trials? I mean, what is kind of the outlook?
Her goal is to make the trials and to fight as hard as she can for one of the 3 alternate spots.
Okay.
Like Amelia is very realistic, but she also knows that sometimes you need to set your goals a step higher than what you might be able to do, and then you might get a little bit under that. So, she was amazing last week at the ranch. Amazing. And she's like coming to fruition right at the right time. Like, and we've worked together incredibly on our thought process and our heart and what we're going to invest into this. And, we don't want to walk away with any woulda, coulda, shouldas. And she's so fun to coach right now because it's so much internal motivation that, I do very little, but yet I don't feel like I need to do anything, but she wants to be coached. She wants you to give her every 10th of capability to rise as you can. So it's really fun right now with her, and who knows? I mean, I've had other kids that did things beyond what anybody believed they could do, and Amelia might be next.
Now, I guess when Lexi left, because they were so close, were you concerned that it would affect her, and how did it affect her?
Good and bad. It had always been Lexi and Amelia. Lexi and Amelia. And Lexi was so charismatic and still is, and so beautiful, and so all these outward things that Amelia was always, Lexi and Amelia, Lexi and Amelia. So that part when Lexi left and Amelia really found herself and became Meals, her nickname, then she became this person all of herself. But the loneliness of her best friend, even though she knew and her parents helped her realize you can still be best friends, but maybe this is what's best for your gymnastics career, everything went great. And they're still best buddies and talk all the time. And Lexi comes in the gym to see her when she's in town from LSU, and it's very comfortable.
So she's headed to Florida, and elites have a 50-50. They're either really hot in college or really injured usually. What do you predict for Amelia next year?
Hot.
Okay. How hot, Mary Lee? What are we?
Well, you know what? She's been pretty healthy. She's had little stuff here and there, but Amelia is a dancer. She's a contemporary dancer. She was in dance with her mom for a long time and stuff. And she is going to light up the floor. And there's, she said to me, this was interesting because we can talk about college and what she's going to do when she leaves without it being a distraction to now. She can be very present. Yeah, we can have fun talking about, you'll never have to do that damn full pirouette on bars again once you get to college, stuff like that. And, she said, do you think I have a chance at doing all around in college? And I said, Meals, you know how we always set the standard a little bit higher than what we're capable of? You better set that standard to go all around in college because you are totally capable. So she's going into the University of Florida to be an all-arounder and to someday be an NC2A all-around champion.
Do you follow them in college? Do you watch the meets?
Oh my gosh. I have every subscription to all of the online TV sites, Gator Vision and blah, 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 blah. And, I follow all of my former athletes, and almost, with the exception of this past year, I go to NC2As because I love that competition. Not just to see my own athletes, but years and years of being in this elite system, which I've been there for feels like forever. You get to know these girls, and to watch some of these girls that struggled so much for different reasons in elite, and to watch them be just amazing in college is beautiful.
So who's your team, Mary Lee?
The Olympic team?
No.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Oh, go. Who's your Olympic team? Okay. I was going to ask who your college team was, but Olympic team's a better question. This is...
Okay. So I feel that the 3 that are definites, unless... Okay, so you always have to think about all the things that could happen physically.
Yeah.
So Simone, Gabby, and Allie are shoo-ins unless they do something out of the ordinary, I feel. Then you have Lori and Maggie, who are incredible all-arounders that are going to vie for positions 4 and 5. But then we have the event specialist, because we don't have super, super high scores on bars. We have decent bars. So there's Ashton and there's Madison Koshin.
Do you think Madison's other events matter if they're not team finals worthy?
Well, I think they matter for backup. Okay, so when you're going to select an Olympic team, you're going to start with you always begin with the end in mind. I got to put 3 up and 3 count. So that's where, when you're the selection committee, which I'm not the selection committee, but I know that they start with 3 up, 3 count. Then after that, you go to 4 up, 4 count, and you can scratch 1 event. So that's how you think about where you're going to put the players in. So, for Madison, the fact that she can do beam decent, and she can do floor decent, vault is weak, that's a little bit of padding for her over, say, Ashton, who does okay beam and no floor and no vault. So if Marta's going to pick a specialist, I would probably say Maddie maybe a little bit more over Ashton, but they're both exquisite on bars.
You're thinking my favorite Reagan Smith is going to be an alternate?
Reagan Smith, well, considering that we have 2 that I named that are not healthy at the moment, Reagan is a dog fighter. I love that little kid, and she is in there scrapping and fighting, and she could make the team.
Will we see the Aminar from Gabby, do you think?
I think it's a 50-50. I think she's absolutely physically capable, but whether she pushes herself to that will be the difference.
Well, we wanted to end with some fun questions for you because you have so much personality. We remember you doing the black balloons with people's fears and releasing them into the sky, Mary Lee. We want to know more about you. So what are you passionate about besides coaching?
Well, nowadays, in the past 8 months, I'm a Grammy.
What's your granddaughter's name?
Her name is Leah Marie, Leah partially after the Grammy. That is my passion right now. And I think that my other passion, as I don't know where I want to go and be, I'm at that late midlife crisis. I really love mentoring coaches. Like next weekend, I'm teaching the W300, 400 for USA Gymnastics. This summer, pending all the other stuff, I'm going to do a lot of clinics. I really, not that my way is the right way, but, I've been doing this for 35 years and I've got a lot to share that can maybe help other coaches take shortcuts to success, get some new ideas. So that is my passion. And then my home. I'm a homebody.
Well, we know that you read Oprah Magazine. What do you watch on TV?
Right now, Grey's Anatomy, Netflix.
Okay.
I'm obsessed.
And
before that, it was Gilmore Girls. Gilmore Girls was, because it was me and my daughter, so I love Gilmore Girls. So Grey's Anatomy, I am on season 9, episode 11.
You mentioned your daughter. How did Rachel get into coaching?
What do you mean?
Well, I didn't think she was involved in gymnastics, and then she's with you.
Rachel is taller than I am, so she did up to level 8 maybe, and and then she decided. I never said, "Hey, honey, you're not really too hot at this." I was the number 1 cheerleader because I knew that it was good for her, and so then she went in and did the little cheerleading thing, and then she went to college, and she had done all through high school missionary trips, and so she was in something international affairs in college, and then she said, "Mom, I want to coach." So she coached through college at the gym. She went to a school about an hour away, so she would drive in to coach at the gym, and then when she graduated, she decided she wanted to coach full time, but she has no desire to be an elite coach. She wants to be a mommy, and she wants a little bit more of a normal life. Not that she totally doesn't respect and appreciate and love what we did together, but that's not going to be the life that she chooses, because she saw the ultimate sacrifices, and she respected them, and obviously respected them enough to still want to coach gymnastics. So that's pleasing for me to see that I didn't mess her up through my crazy passions.
Well, in that documentary, your dad was really the star. He was
Yep.
the breakout star. How is he doing?
He's alive.
Okay.
He's 82 and he's kicking, and he still is my number one fan and cheers me on, and every now and then stomps around into the gym and makes his presence known. And yeah, he's a good old fart.
Now, how are the dogs? Because Phoebe seemed like the nice dog, but then there was Sophie who had all the personality, Mary Lee.
Sophie is still the sassy, but now she's a sassy old lady, grumpy. I no longer travel her to the ranch because she always got diarrhea on the way back, because I'm not sure why. And Phoebe is she's just a happy girl that takes care of Sophie and keeps her in line. And it's nice to have dogs when your children are gone, and you don't come home to an empty house.
Well, you are known for addressing any weaknesses in your athletes. We know all about your drills. How do you like to stay in shape?
I love to walk, especially now that I have the baby. And I love to do little cardio stations. I have a little workout room in my basement. And so I like to say, watch Grey's Anatomy and go from my little treadmill to my bike to whatever. I'm not a big fitness person. If I had more time, now maybe if I'm not as involved and I do other things, I love to work out. And when I was younger, I was, a little bit anal about working out, but other things in life to me have taken precedence over that. But I also know to be able to coach and spot, which I still do, there is an element of fitness that I must maintain.
So are you McSteamy or McDreamy?
McSteamy or McDreamy? I don't know that. Come on.
Grey's Anatomy. Derek?
Oh! I'm in between.
In between.
I go back and forth.
Okay. I was a Mark fan. I'm just saying. Derek's always so upset, Mary Lee.
Derek started off really being much more even-keeled. And then when he was in running for the chief position and all that, and then his ugliness with Meredith was so disappointing and disheartening, didn't you think?
Yeah, I think you're picking the wrong guy. It's McSteamy.
It's McSteamy. Got it. Who do I really like the most on there? I think Meredith.
I was a Lexi, but I like Meredith as well.
I like Lexi. I wish Mark and Lexi wouldn't have died. I just got past all that part.
I just quit the show after it happened. I couldn't continue. It was done for me.
Just slightly past there, and I'm still very much engaged because we're still in the aftermath of all of that goings on. I love the adopted abstract baby with the two moms and the dad. I love the diversity of the show. I don't like the blood. I do never go to a suspenseful movie. I never watch scary stuff because life has enough.
Yeah.
I don't need to. When I sit and watch something, I would prefer to be a little more relaxed. Like I would probably be known for chick flicks.
Okay. Well, our final question. The ranch is known as being a unique place with these strange animals. Kim said that she likes to run, but in a very small circle. We know some coaches like to play cards. What do you like to do at the ranch?
I like the fact, as much as I hate the fact about the internet and the phone, but I like that when I go there, I am so just into my athletes because I don't have my day-to-day distractions. And if there was better internet and all of that, I would get back into my merry-go-round of life. So I feel like when I go to the ranch, I step off of that merry-go-round. I like to walk around this little soccer field with my motivational tapes in my ears. I like to play cards once in a while. I don't like to play all the time. Some days I just want to go back and breathe and be alone and recover and get ready for the next day. I don't want to go from gym to all gymnastics. So as I've gotten older, I need to recover and recuperate a little bit more. I love the people the most. I think that's what kept me going is the people.
What's it like seeing Steve Nuno back there when he first came?
Hilarious. Hilarious. Like just memories come back. Steve's exactly the same. Yeah, it's been fun having him back around.
Well, we wish you so much luck this summer, and thank you so much for giving us so much of your time.
You're welcome. It was fun talking to you because you're a gymnastics guru/fan, and you're very passionate. I can see all that. So it was really